Hey, welcome to Business Breakthroughs. I'm Neal Dipentino. I'm your host. Today we have a wonderful guest I'd like to introduce to you here just in just a second. But let me give you a little background about him before we get started. Today's guest has grown a business in the electronic industry from $1 million to $100 million. He's an internationally known professional speaker, author, executive coach, and business consultant. He's made numerous media appearances, including my old boss's interview, Mr. Kevin O'Leary, and he's written hundreds of business and personal articles, the author of the best selling book, Leader of the Pack. He's accomplished all this while raising 5 children successfully to adulthood as a single father. Today, I would like to welcome to Business Breakthrough CEO of Greener Process Systems, business consultant, Mr. Matt Sweetwood. Hi, Matt. How you doing, buddy?
Hey Neil, how are you? Wow, what an introduction. My neck hurts. You know why? Because my head swelled and it's creating too much weight on the neck. I need to do
uh,
more neck exercises in the gym if I'm going to get introductions like that. So
well, yeah, get back in the gym, strengthen it up a little
that's
bit.
right, exactly. Yeah, yeah.
Absolutely. Well, you got to be a pretty strong guy in the first place. Maybe not physically, but physically and mentally to be able to do the things that you've done, accomplish the things that you've accomplished. I spent quite a bit of time looking at your website. I looked at your LinkedIn profile, and frankly, it was dizzy. It was making me dizzy. There was so much stuff going on. You're so well accomplished. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, Matt?
So first, I think I want to impart a little bit of wisdom to the audience, really off of what you said. So I'm going to talk about physical strength and mental strength, right? So I was a young man when I had to raise 5 kids on my own, a very young man, a babe, really. And mom walked out on him. That's what I wrote my book about, Leader of the Pack, how a single dad of 5 led his kids, his business, and himself from disaster to success. And one of the things that I learned along the way, and I'm going to tell this to business people out there, it's extremely crucial advice, is that physical strength is the foundation of emotional and mental strength. So what got me through was sort of the realization that if I was going to handle the stress of life, and if you're trying to be an entrepreneur, you're trying to run your own business, or you're raising a family, or you're just dealing with inflation, or whatever the stresses are out there, being in a very, very strong state, physically strong, is fundamental. The best example I can use of that, you ever watch like a football game and you watch 2 teams playing and they're playing pretty evenly? And you have one team, let's say, that played on Thursday, right? They had the Thursday game, and the other team only played the previous Sunday. What happens in the game when they play is the team that physically tires doesn't get overrun right away. What they typically do is they start to make mental mistakes. They take a penalty, they miss a coverage. Because when you get worn down, when you get physically worn down, you just start to, everything in your life becomes more difficult. You get more depressed. You have trouble dealing with the stress and so on. So my advice, one of my number one advices to all sort of business people out there is head to the gym, eat right, sleep right, and make yourself physically strong. It doesn't mean only cardiovascular strong. I mean physically strong. Okay, I'll pivot from that because I really love
Well,
imparting that advice.
I may have to shut this off a little bit short because now all of a sudden I feel guilty. I need to go to the gym.
That's right. Let's go. We could do this from the gym. That would really be novel. We could
That
be
would
like
be a great show.
we
I
can be
think
like
so.
deadlifting
Absolutely.
while we're doing this kind of thing.
Yeah. I don't think we're going to impress any. I know I'm not going to impress
Impress
anyone.
anybody? I don't know. I'm pretty good for my age. I'm like
Are you?
weightlifting most of my life, so
All right.
I'm in pretty good shape. Not to be confused with Arnold, but okay.
Well, yeah.
Nevertheless, so I'll just sort of tell you that I had the misfortune and then the ultimate fortune of having to raise kids as a single dad. Mom walked out on them, and then that situation forced me to become a man and to man up and to really figure out life and figure out what's important in life and figure out all of those problems. I faced problems like that in my electronics business that you mentioned in the beginning. It was a business that faced incredible market conditions. We were a film seller. We eventually had to, transition our business to digital. We used to sell B2B. The small stores went out of business. We ended up opening up a camera store of our own, ended up being one of the largest in the country, reinvented the camera store model. So life is always about solving problems and overcoming difficulties. and in the way that you actually do that. And when I exited that business, actually, I didn't really plan on taking on a new business. I had my share of problems that I solved in my life. I wrote my book, Leader of the Pack. I was speaking and consulting, doing business consulting, coaching, doing that kind of thing, having really sort of a good ride of it when I exited that business. And then I had the opportunity to solve sort of a very current problem, which is a pollution problem. Something that I wasn't aware of is that there are essentially factories all over the world that like a steel factory, a glass factory, a cement factory. These factories have open smokestacks. They just pour pollution into the air. And I had the opportunity to steer a company as their CEO to that actually can capture those emissions. So my company, Greener Process Systems, we have patented technology which caps smokestacks. It cleans the air, can capture CO2 in some cases, and we generate electricity off the wasted heat that comes off the stack. It's relatively new technology. It's our invention, and we have proposals out to factories all over this country to actually do something significant to not only capture air pollution, which is a major contributor to disease and health and all sorts of problems, but also generate electricity from it. And it's ready to do now. We can actually install right now. So I'm really excited about that in the sense that this is going to be another sort of completely different problem that I get to solve in my life.
That's
So
awesome. It's incredible to me that you really made. I see people pivoting all the time. You might pivot from one thing to the next, but this is like a huge pivot. I mean, you went from the photography business, and I know there's been other things in between all that. But how did you determine that this was something that you wanted to get involved with?
I think it's a little bit of serendipity, right? When I left that electronics business, photography business, I had done that for 20 something years, and I exited at the top of the business. If you look at that clear thing up there, that's the Person of the Year trophy because of my reinvention of the business model, right? Dust collector now. And then I said, I'm not going to do anything unless I really have something that excites me. Let me just do my thing, have a successful consulting business and coaching business, typically coaching, CEOs, professionals, things like that, architects, lawyers. I've even coached a rabbi once or twice along the way, believe it or not, needed business help. No rabbinical training, just business help.
Sure.
Um, and the opportunity came along to sort of solve a current problem that's completely different. It was exciting to me, and there was an opportunity here because of the technology to do something that's ready right now. One of the things that I've learned in the clean tech, green tech, environmental sustainability business is that most everything is what I call vaporware. It's we have an idea, we're working on it, we should be able to implement it at some time in the future, and it will fix 2% of the problem by 2040.
Wow.
When I hear that, I'm like, I mean, I hope I'm alive in 2040. Okay. I know my kids, my grandkids, all of that stuff will be, I'm sure will be there and you can do it for them. But, I want to do something that's significant. And the opportunity to have technology that can actually make a difference right now, very unique to me, was extremely appealing. And that's what drove me to the business and to do something different, right? When you do something for a long time in your life, I was in that, you know, electronics business for a very long time. And, I don't want to say that I was tired of it, but it was time for a change. And, I went out there, I've consulted other companies. I served as interim CEO for a few different companies along the way. I'm the guy they bring in to fix things. When there's a problem, they bring me in to fix the problem. I fix the problem, say, it's now back to you. It's all yours. And this was just really an amazing opportunity that came to me through somebody that had worked for me in one of those interim companies. I did something good for him. He called me up, said, we need a CEO, brought me in and so on. So I think if anybody in their career has an opportunity to do something new and fresh and current, I think you go for it. And I did, even though I wasn't necessarily looking for it.
That's incredible. We're in my town where I live right now. We are in the process of we're voting on this, I should say. They want to bring in a way where they would take trash waste and they would burn that, I guess, somehow, and then convert that into gas and use that as a fuel.
Right.
And I know that the community is like very up in arms about it. There's a lot of resistance over this technology. It's primarily because people just don't understand the technology, I would imagine. So I would imagine in your business and greener process systems, just like pretty much any business, you're going to get some kind of resistance from your clients. How do you overcome some
Yeah,
of that
first thing I'll
resistance?
say, by the way, you should connect me with them because we'll cap the smokestack of that plant and it'll be zero emissions, just so you know.
Awesome. I
We
will.
actually have a quotation out to a similar kind of, hopefully they go for it. Here's what you face in this industry. We walk into a factory that is producing crazy amounts of pollution. They have an open stack. They're melting some metal. I don't know, think like steel or concrete or they're aluminum, something like that. And they're being fined by the EPA, even, whatever, maximum fine by the EPA. And you tell them, we can cap your stack and make you emissions, essentially zero emissions. They go, that's nice. Not really interested. Then we can tell them that we can capture emissions. And not only that, we probably can separate out CO2. And they go, well, we're not really near a CO2 pipeline, so there's really nothing to do with the CO2. So we don't care about that. Then we tell them we can cap their smokestack and generate $6 million worth of electricity. It'll pay off the system in a year or two. And then you make $6 million a year in electricity. They go, we're interested. So in the environmental business, a lot of people talk the talk. They talk, they want, they do, they take these little baby steps, they do a lot of PR. But when it comes to really spending money strictly for sustainability or environmental improvement, most places are very reluctant, which, I don't want to say it and be a jerk about saying it, right? Because I'm not the one spending the money to put the systems in, and I've run profit making business and understand making a profit, which is also why our what we offer is very exciting because we have one of the few clean tech products that actually can generate revenue. And so, if you're able to generate revenue, and I think that that's a good lesson for business, is that business doesn't operate off altruistic principles. It operates off of making money. And I don't know if I'd ever want to change that. And
Mhm.
so I think that until we were able to sort of present our offering in a way that, hey, this can be a profit center for you and provide you environmental benefit, I'm not surprised that we didn't get a lot of traction. So now we have a lot of traction, a lot of projects about to kick off. And as a result, because we can make money. So I think that's a really good lesson to problem solvers out there. If you have a problem and people are not, or you can't figure out how to do it, how do you make money off it, right? Or how do you make your client money off of it? And that's going to be a real secret to, it sounds ridiculously simple, but sometimes you don't really think of it in those terms. And if there's money to be had, people will go to the money.
You're absolutely right. I think about my own business. We have ways to help people to generate more income, get more traffic into their business, whatever their goal might be. But it really always comes down to how can I make more money? Can you prove that this is going to make more money for me? And I think a lot of businesses, they talk about concepts, they talk about possibilities and everything that without having real data to be able to support any of that, and they don't go in with their numbers. They don't because they don't know their numbers, perhaps.
That's right. When we make a proposal to a company, we go in and we're going to tell them that based on X amount of cost per kilowatt, you're going to generate this much in dollars in electricity. You're going to get this much in carbon credits. The Inflation Reduction Act, Inflation Reduction, but it's really, it's an environmental act will provide you X funding. And you have a state incentive. You do this and you go back and you say, this is the actual financial model. Before you even get to this is what we filter out of the air. This is what the system costs. This is, they don't, it's all about really the revenue that gets generated off the system. And if you do that, you're going to be successful, of course, 100%. And I do that too, by the way. I have people trying to sell me things all the time. I'm like, I understand how it makes you money, right? But now tell me how it's going to make me money. And if you're
Right.
convincing in how it's going to make me money, if you say to me, whatever you do for me costs $1,000, and you say to me, Matt, but at the end you're going to have $2,000, okay, and you prove it to me, why wouldn't I do it? Makes sense, right? Obviously, I want to make $1,000, so I'm going to do it.
Well, I mean, they're not in the business. I mean, I guess most businesses are not in the business to, I guess look good or whatever. I'm not sure exactly what the word might be, but they're in business for a specific reason, and that's to bring in revenue so that they can support themselves, support their employees, support their families, the whole nine yards. So, I mean, obviously, that's the key, most important thing. And I want to kind of play off that just a little bit and go back. This has all been very interesting, and I appreciate you telling us a little bit more about greener industries. But I want to talk a little bit more about your past because you've built some incredible businesses, all while you were raising, five children to adulthood, all by yourself, a single dad and everything. That had to take a lot of balance. Can you tell me a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think the balance comes out of necessity. So I am not a believer in this concept of work-life balance as a thing. I think that work-life balance, a better way of putting this is is you do what is necessary to make all aspects of your life function. So that means that you need to have time to build your physical strength. Notice how I started with that. You need to have time to run or be in your business or manage your job. You need to have time for your family. And you need to have time for yourself, I guess, really is what it comes down to. Maybe we put that in the category of exercise and so on. And it all comes down to ultimately organization. And I think that my biggest strength was the panic mode that I had when I had a little children to deal with and I had a very challenged business. I mean, it's very good to sit here and say I grew a business from 1 to 100 million. You say it in literally 2 seconds. It sounds good. But I'm going to tell you, there were times in there where I didn't know if we were going to make it. And we had to solve very significant problems affected by the market and technology and regulation and just all economy, all sorts of things that go on in there. And so, in order to be successful, I think for anybody to be successful in their life and manage multiple aspects, it's really all comes down to organization, planning, having yourself put together, getting proper rest, doing all of the things that you need to do with purpose. I think a lot of times people just kind of let life come to them. And while there's a zen to that, right? We can sit there and and just kind of let it happen. Ultimately, successful people take charge of their lives. And that's what I had to do. I had to manage getting the kids up in the morning, getting them to school. I eventually got help in the house. You have to manage the help. I had to go to work and manage the staff. I had to try to get myself in shape. I had to try to have a social life. And you do that, and I just became super organized. As a matter of fact, I used to talk about this. I was like, this is a silly kind of thing, but I was like the first one to have a Palm Pilot. Okay. And then I don't, your audience probably has no clue. Half the people
Home
have no
pilot.
clue what that is. But I had a Palm Pilot, and this was like the first personal organizer. And I had the concept of doing a schedule on there and putting my personal appointments and my business appointments, personal contacts, business contacts all together. So you would look at my thing and you would see me, okay, 10 a.m. call with president of Nikon. Okay. 12 o'clock, meet kids teacher at school. 1 o'clock, right? Sales meeting. Okay. 3 o'clock, prepare our marketing, meet with the marketing staff. 5 o'clock, gym, right? 6 o'clock on a date. 8 o'clock, it would be like my thing would look like that. Manage the kids, take the kids to soccer, pay this for my calendar was like that. And I think that organization, I know this is sort of like, it sounds like an obvious or just some maybe a simplistic system, but I'm telling you, everybody I know that